Welcome to Burning Questions, the interview series where we get real with B2B tech leaders while asking 10 questions and eating extremely spicy food. I'm joined here today by John Barrows, a sales professional and also sales trainer. Thank you, John, for joining me.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
You're aware of the path that we're about to go down.
I am, and I think I'm already regretting being here, but I'm looking forward to seeing how bad this is going to get. Yeah.
This is good. This is exciting. Well, we just to remind everybody, you know, what we're going to do is before each question that I ask, you're going to spin the wheel.
Yep.
We're going to then both. I'm going down this path with you.
And I appreciate that.
We're both going to eat this food as a prize for completing. We've asked you to play for somebody. So who are you playing for today?
Playing for my wife. So
playing for your wife. All right.
Yes.
So what we've done is we've asked Alyce to do some research about your wife.
Cool.
To come back to you with some gifts that you would then be able to choose from.
Very cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Should you complete?
Yeah.
You have to get.
Yeah, I got to get through all this. All right, good.
All right, John. Let's get real. Spin the wheel.
Here we go.
So there's no real safe
I was going to say,
anymore.
that doesn't seem like it matters at all.
Yeah.
Oh, the noodles.
All right.
Starting at the end here. Okay.
So these are the noodles over here.
All of them?
Yeah, it's kind of a lot, but if you just kind of go for it.
Fuck it. Yep, that's hot.
What's a memory you have from growing up in Bedford? And what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Shit. I didn't know. Honestly, you know, when I was a kid, I'm writing a book now, actually. It says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because everybody's asking me about, like, hey, you know, when are you going to write your book? And I think most books are crap. I don't read that much anyways. But I'm writing a book but it's a kid's book. And what do you want to be when you grow up? And I want to be in sales when I grow up. Because nobody ever says that when they're a kid. Fireman, those type of things. I mean, I wanted to be all the normal shit. Art was actually my first passion. But I kind of knew early on that I wanted to make money. So my mom is the one who kind of reminded me that I had a very strong passion to make money. And I didn't know how, but we had like a career day one time. And somebody came in from Channel 5 News here in Boston, and they were, you know, talking about being a weather forecaster or something like that. And they're like, "Oh, do you have any questions?" My first question was, "How much money do you make?" Right? And I don't know why, because my parents were never that way. So I knew whatever it was going to be in business. I started selling when I was a kid. You know, pumpkins. You know, that was my first sale type stuff. But then as I graduated through, you know, art was my real passion. Then my dad was an engineer. My mom was an artist. So both science and art. When I got into school, I actually chose University of Maryland, my college, because they didn't force me to declare a major, because I still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I kept kind of just rolling with it. And then I settled on marketing, but then I found sales, and that's really where kind of things took off for me out of college. So
nice,
yeah.
Nice. So pumpkins.
Yes.
Season is coming up here.
Yeah.
What's a good pumpkin price?
Well, so the pumpkin story about selling, you know, again, art, that was the one kind of thing in school that I really excelled at. Everything else I was kind of average or above average. Art was the one thing I was really good at. And so, and coupling that with trying to make cash, I would go to the grocery, like Stop and Shop or whatever, and I would get those tiny pumpkins, and then I would paint faces on them. You know, like, you know, clown faces or whatever it was for Halloween, and then I would go to school and sell them for twice as much as I bought them for, right? So yeah, I would just I would use, you know, paints and whatever I had in the house, and made actually a decent amount of cash. So I think that's what got me early, as far as knowing that I could take something and buy it and then do something with it and then sell it, and people liked it. So that's really where that took off. But yeah, it was fun. And now you see them all at the grocery stores, right? All the little ones, you see faces on them. That's what I used to go bring to school and try to sell them. So.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, good. That was question number one. How did that feel?
Not bad. Okay. That was better than I was expecting. I was expecting a much longer and harder burn than that. So I think we started off on the right foot.
All right, that sounds great. All right, question number two. Go ahead, spin it up.
All right. Oh, want me to just do it again?
You can do it again, sure. Yeah,
right,
we can get.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more.
No, let's try some of these other fuck you sauces here.
Yep. All right. So.
All right.
Oh gosh.
Mad Dog hot sauce.
All right, that's all the way. This is called Mad Dog 357. Here, it's this one.
Okay.
So grab a
nugget.
Nug here.
Okay. This is all the way to the top?
Yeah, just get a little.
That good?
Yeah. So it looks like one of your first jobs out of college was sales event marketing specialist at Black & Decker.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience?
I learned about not going for the quick sale. So I actually learned a couple of things. Because the first job, this was actually my entree into sales. They positioned it as sales, but it was really event marketing. So it wasn't hardcore sales right out of school. Oh, fuck. Because I got my degree in marketing. And so it was it was the first team in Boston. It was called the Swarm Team, and we drove around in Dodge Ram pickup trucks. And our job was, and this was before they had the quotas and everything, so I kind of lucked out from a timing standpoint. Our job was literally, we had all of New England, and our job was to drive around to construction sites, find people who were using DeWalt tool, or who were using any other tool, and then introduce them to the DeWalt tool, specifically the cordless stuff, because that's when it was really start coming up. And then put events on at like Woodworkers Warehouse and Home Depot. But we didn't have to sell anything. Like, it would be like, hey, do you like these? Yeah, sure. Well, the next time you go by, why don't you go to Home Depot and pick up these instead of your Makita drill, something like that. But what I learned early was you can learn something from everybody. Because I had 5 members on my team, and what they would do is when they would get on a construction site, they would immediately go to the foreman and try to sell the foreman on buying, you know, pallets of DeWalt tools. I love DeWalt power tools. I knew about them. They educated us, but I didn't know them as well as the workers did. Right? These guys who were beating the shit out of tools every single day, right? So what I did was, I remember trying to go to the foreman a couple of times and getting basically, no, beat it, right? So then I started just sitting down with the workers. And I'd drive on a site and I'd find the guy who was using a drill. And I'd be like, hey, you know, you're using that Makita. Do you like that thing? He's like, yeah, you know, I've been using it for a while. I go, have you ever tried the DeWalt version of that? I'd be like, no. I'd be like, here, I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to give you this tool. I want you to literally beat the shit out of it for a week, right? Use it exactly the same, and I want to come back in a week, and I want to understand what the difference is from your perspective. And so I would just give it to him, right? And I'd sit and watch him, and as he did his thing, and I would leave, and I would come back. Wow, that thing keeps burning, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
And then I would come back and I'd be like, all right, so what'd you think? He'd be like, actually, I really like it because, and he would talk about like the ergonomics or the whatever it did and how fast and this. And so I learned about that. And I would do that with 3 or 4 guys. And then I would take that knowledge and then go to the foreman and say, hey, I've been working with your guys here. They're telling us that some of their challenges are with the drills that they're currently using are boom, boom, and boom. And I actually let them use my DeWalt for a while. And they said it solves these by doing this. So would you be interested in maybe picking up some DeWalts instead? And with that, my orders like were 10x times what the other reps were because they were getting their door shut in their face. And I was just like, hey, I learned from your people about what they need and what they don't need. And now here's what I'm telling you. So I don't want to say bottom up selling, but I learned that, you know, you can literally learn something from everybody. The other 4 reps that were on my team, not that they discredited the workers, but they really did. You know, they just kind of walked right by him, like, well, you're not the one buying this shit, so I'm gonna go talk to the person that did. And I'm like, why don't we talk to the people that use the stuff first, see if they'd even want it, right? And then go sell. And that's where I was one of the top reps in DeWalt. So
that is great. That is a great story. Very applicable to B2B.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is a serious sauce. Once you
that one doesn't quit.
Does not quit. It's still kicking in the back, like the back of my tongue.
Yeah.
Question number 3. Go ahead. Spin the wheel.
Yeah.
Let's not get that one again.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, da bomb nuts.
Okay,
Sorry, it's over
guys,
here.
Yep.
Yeah, grab a few of these here. That's where we need a beer. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
This one's an easy one. The number one piece of advice that I go back to A/B split testing. Because, ooh, those are good. Yeah, this definitely fucks with your head as far as trying to give an answer and trying to manage the shit that's happening in your mouth. A/B split test, and I mean this because, you know, I'll fast forward a little bit. DeWalt, Xerox, And then I started a company doing outsourced IT services. I was 25 years old. At that point in my career, the only thing I felt like I could control was my effort, right? So I was like, I'm just gonna work harder than everybody else. Like I don't know what I don't know. So I'm just gonna make more cold calls. I'm gonna go to more events. I'm gonna, because I know I can control my effort. And it worked. I had an equation that was like, I made $400 a week, got me 8 meetings a month, got me 4 proposals, got me 2 pieces of closed business, an average deal size of $3,500 a month. Like that was it, and I ran that. But it was all effort. I was legitimately just basically trying to trip over opportunities by playing the volume game. And if I look back on it, and I had one generic elevator pitch, and I still remember it to this day, by the way. I could say it with my eyes closed, and I would say it until I was blue in the face, right? And then, and I'd probably trip over a few, like find computers, right? But if I could go back, instead of making 400 blind cold calls with a generic elevator pitch, I'd come up with 4 different approaches. And I'd make $100 with this, $100 with this, $100 with this, and $100 with this. And I would see which one yielded a higher conversion ratio. And I would start to focus in on that. And you could do this with everything, right? Like gatekeepers, right? Like, I don't know the best way to get through a gatekeeper. Well, for you, I know what works for me, but my personality, your personality, that might not work for you. So gatekeepers, for instance, in the morning, be really nice to them. In the afternoon, be very direct with them. See which one yields objections. It was really 5 or 6 ways of handling objections. Write down an objection. Come up with 2 different ways of handling that objection. The next 20 times it comes up, deal with this. And with that approach, with that mentality, you start to figure out what works a lot faster. And by treating sales much more scientifically than artistically, it's a lot more interesting. Because now, you go home from a day, here's an example. Say if I were to tell you to make $50 in a day, right? And you get no meetings. That's a terrible day. It's a very, at the end of the day, you go home completely like, oh man, this is a brutal day. But if you make $50 and you make $25 with this approach and $25 with this approach, and you still get no meetings, to me that's actually not a bad day. Because you just figured out 2 approaches that don't work. Tomorrow you come and try a couple new ones. You eventually start to figure out what works for you. So instead of just blindly going through and not thinking and just doing pure activity, I would be a lot more conscious of what I was trying and the different approaches for different things, so I could get that much better, that much faster.
That's fascinating. Do you write that stuff down even at a young age? Do you?
I didn't. I wish I did. Now I think it's easy. What I used to do with my team at Thrive was I had about 6 reps reporting to me, and so what I would do is we'd pick something once a week. And I'd say, all right, guys, what's the challenge we're trying to address this week? Okay, John, we're getting crushed by gatekeepers. Okay, cool. Who wants to own this one? Right, because I'd delegate to team members. So I'd say, all right, do me a favor. Go on Google for a few minutes. Type in best way to handle gatekeepers, right? And find an approach that you think is going to work for us. Now, come back to us. Let's do a little role play of how this works, right? Now this week, and everybody would have a notebook next to their desk, and we would write down what the challenge was, equals gatekeepers, approach equals whatever, be super nice to them and that type of thing, and then a plus minus. So now I would tell them, no matter what happens this week, everybody do what you want to do, like with all your meetings and that type of thing, but when you make a cold call and a gatekeeper picks up, I want you all to use that approach. And then just write a plus minus. It worked, it didn't work, it worked, it didn't work. And then I would collect those pieces of paper at the end of the week and say, hey everybody, we talked to 500 gatekeepers this week as a team. We used this approach 500 times. We got 250 pluses, we got 250 minuses. Like, that's actually not a bad approach. Next week, let's try a different one. And see, you know what I mean? So you can kind of just do some back of napkin math where you identify the approach and then just do, yes, it worked, it didn't work. And you don't have to have a technology to do it. Yeah, you can use tools like, some of the email cadence tools and those type of things to figure out subject line, those type of things. But I like old school with just pen and paper, so you're focused on that one thing, no matter what else you're doing.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Question number 4.
Yeah, all right.
Spin the wheel. I feel like we got enough time to recover there.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mad, is that the one we just did?
We did Mad Dog.
All right, let's do it. Let's do another one.
Right.
I want to taste the rest of these fuckers.
There we go. All right, we're gonna go this right here.
Is this the one with ghost peppers in it?
Yep, this has ghost pepper. Grab one of these chips as well.
Oh, fuck off. And these have ghost pepper on them.
They do, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yep. All right. So, in one of your blog posts, the downside of an acquisition, how to navigate your career and life better than I did. You said it was time for me to leave. Making that decision, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. That chip was falling off.
Yep.
How did that experience influence your career path?
That was huge. Actually, that one's not hot starting. That gets hotter.
Yeah, these the ones with the ghost peppers and the Reaper, which a lot of these have, are almost delayed.
Okay. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Downside of an acquisition.
Yep.
How did that experience influence your career path?
Okay, so I wrote another blog associated with that one, different angle to it, was called Stop Doing What You're Supposed to Do. Because I think a lot of us get caught in what we're supposed to do and don't really think about what we want to do or what we should be doing. So I'll give you an example. When I was in college, I met this girl when I was a freshman, and I locked in, so 7 years, right? So graduated, she was from Maryland when I went to school, and then I moved to Boston, moved her to Boston. And what are you supposed to do after you're with somebody for 7 years, right? You're supposed to get married, right? And then you're supposed to have a kid, then you're supposed to buy a house, then you're supposed to have a kid. So that was my traditionalist mindset of, even though I knew the relationship wasn't good, I was gonna go through with it, because I'm like, I can't, I don't break off a 7-year relationship, right? I need to get married now. Thankfully, she actually broke it off with me. Like she, about, a few months before the wedding, she dumped me, and I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, right? But legitimately, 2 days of, oh, woe is me, curled up into a ball, I woke up, and it felt like a weight was, literally lifted off of my shoulders. I'm like, wow. And that's probably the best thing that ever happened to me personally, because she pulled that cord, thank God, before I went through with it. And now I'm married and I have an awesome wife and kid, and I'm super happy, right? Business-wise, same thing. So one of the things I've learned in business is knowing where you fit makes a difference, right? So some people are good at startups, like pure startup chaos, 0 to 10 million type of thing. Others are good from like 10 to 50 million, like once there's a little bit of structure and process, and then there's 50 million to IPO or acquisition or something, like different skill set, and then after that. I had brought Thrive. I had startup. I'm the second. I've learned about myself. I'm not the first guy with the idea and the person who's willing to take 100% of the risk, like, live in my parents' basement, eat ramen noodles type of shit.
Yeah. Although you did just eat ramen noodles.
Yeah, true. but now I'm getting paid. But I'm the second guy. Like, so if you have a good idea, I'll come in and put fire on it, right? And I'll take you to that next level. But I'm not a corporate guy at all. But what had happened with Thrive was 7 years at Thrive, built this engine, fastest growing company in Massachusetts for about 3 years in a row. And then we got, and so I was kind of bored. I'm not, because I had figured the system out. I knew the equation, I knew how to plug in the pieces. And so I was like, there's not much more that's challenging to me in this position, but I love this company. I started it, friends and everything. When Staples came and bought us, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is a new challenge. Now my little $10 million company is getting acquired by a $20 billion organization, and I'm the point person for integrating the sales and marketing, right? And so I was super optimistic. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, right? So for about 6 months, I was like, this is gonna be great. I was trying to be the company guy, and I just didn't realize I didn't fit. Like, I am not, I have zero filter. I can't play politics. I literally, like, if you could be Mark Benioff, and if I think you suck at your job, I'm gonna straight up say, Mark, what the fuck? Like, that's a terrible idea, you know what I mean? Or if you're the janitor and you tell me I suck, if it's valid, I'll listen to it, you know what I mean? I don't care what your title is, type of thing. That doesn't go well in the corporate world, right? And so, I remember around 6 months into this acquisition, I went from being very optimistic to being very pessimistic. And I vividly remember, you know the movie 300?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was me, and I'm not even exaggerating on this. There were nights where I would sit in my house with my surround sound 50-inch TV, surround sound, on my couch at 2 o'clock in the morning, watching 300, envisioning myself as Leonidas with my tiny little team of 300 against Staples, who were the Persians, right? And I'm like, fuck that, and I remember saying this, and as soon as these words came out of my mouth, I knew I should have come in and given my resignation and said, I'm done, right? Because I said, I'm gonna succeed despite them.
just despite, because they were putting all this shit, they weren't doing anything, right? They had set these expectations of all the stuff that they were going to do, and they did none of it, but I was holding the bag for it. And I'm not an excuse guy, so I'm like, I'm going to succeed despite them. But now I am them. You know what I mean? Like I'm Staples. I'm no longer Thrive. I'm Staples now. And so for 6 months it was a slugfest. And the funny thing was, is as much as I knew it was wrong, as much as I knew how bad it was, I still kept going because this is my company. Like you cut my arm, I bled blue type of stuff. And so eventually when they fired me, or offered me another position, which in the corporate world is firing you. Like I always tell everybody, people, whoever's listening to this, if you're a VP of something that got a company to a certain level, and then they go ahead and hire an SVP of whatever that is, start looking for a job. Because that's the nice corporate way of saying, fuck off, we're firing you, without firing you, right? So that's what happened, right? And I just was, you know, and I didn't realize that I wasn't the right fit. Because why wouldn't I? I started this company, it's mine, I know how to do this, right? Wrong. You need a different skill set at a different level. And so that's really what it taught me was, you know, stop doing what you're supposed to do. And the last thing I'll say on it is the guy who actually acquired us, so Jay Baitler, to this day, is actually a good friend of mine. When he acquired us, he did an interview with all the managers. And we were, I don't know, 26. And so we didn't know what we were doing. So we had a consultant come in and talk to us about, hey, this is what they're probably going to ask, and this is what you should say. Now, I was a minority shareholder at Thrive. And so I didn't want to screw it up, right? So I told the company line. Jay came in, interviewed manager, individually interviewed me. So John, what do you think about the acquisition? And I put on the, hey, oh, it's going to be great. You know, I can't wait for this. And in the back of my head, I'm going, oh, you're just going to fucking chew us up and spit us out. Like, this is going to be a disaster. We're all going to get fired here in 6 months. And I'm about the worst liar you'll come across. I'm about as transparent as it gets. And so he saw right through that. And that's what put me on a negative track. But I always felt like if I could just grab a beer with Jay, like it would be cool, right? Do something like this. Like we would actually see eye to eye more. Yeah. Fast forward, I get fired. He's the one who fires me. Fast forward, I reached out to him and I said, hey Jay, would you be open, now that I'm gone, would you be open to like just a meeting where I could come in and just learn about what happens? Like for my own personal and professional development. And he was like, absolutely. First of all, he was so excited for that conversation. He's like, John, before we even start, I want to let you know that you reaching out to me after what happened to you tells me more about you than I knew in the year working with you. So you have an hour of my time, you ask any question you want. And I had 10 questions. And he's like, I was like, you can be as honest or as open as you want. You know, he's like, I will tell you anything you need. And one of my questions was, would you have been open to a conversation like this while I was working at Thrive? And he said, yeah, well, why wouldn't I have been? I was like, well, my CEO was trying to protect me. He was like, don't go talk to Jay, because he was worried that if I actually did have that beer with him, that I would be me, and that Jay would be like, screw this kid, fire him immediately, and then the whole thing would fall apart. And so that's why I never my CEO thought he was protecting me, but really he wasn't. So he goes, let me ask you this. Say you went over your CEO's head and you came to me to have this conversation and I just ripped you apart. I was like, blah, 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 you know, why you do that? And I ratted you out to your CEO. He's like, would you have wanted to work for me? I was like, well, no. He's like, then do you think you would have gotten out of this a little bit sooner than you did? I'm like, yeah. Okay, now let's flip the script and say you came to me, we had a really cool conversation, just like we're having right now. Do you think your life the past year would have been a little bit easier? And do you think you would have enjoyed it more? And I was like, well, yeah. He's like, then I'm gonna ask you this question. He's like, what's the risk? And that stuck with me to this day, is what's the risk? Which is, and that's why I've kind of adjusted, I have 12 personal guidelines to success, and I had one that was always have a plan B, because I thought, like when I got fired with Staples, I was in a panic. I was like, I haven't thought of anything other than this for 7 years. What do I do? So I was like, oh, I should have had a plan B. Wrong. I think your plan B distracts from your plan A. But what I changed it to was always be okay with worst case scenario. When you're making a decision about something, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, ask yourself literally what's the worst thing that could happen here. And if you're okay with that, then go for it. And that stuck with me to this day.
That's a phenomenal story. All right, just get another. All right. Just to get the full. All right, this is the zombie apocalypse. Yeah, grab a little.
Got that.
Yeah. One of your blog posts, why I love talking to strangers. You said, in sales, I think we need to go right up to that line without going over. It's kind of like the line between ego and confidence. Do you still believe that?
There's a fine line. There's a fine line between ego and confidence, right? Kind of the same fine line between being direct and being rude. I think you have to figure out what that is for you. You know what I mean? Being from Boston, Northeast, I think a lot of other people in other countries think we're rude. I don't. I love our approach here, and because it's direct. I know, like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel about you. You know what I mean? That's why I love selling in Boston, New York, because you get to a yes or no real fast. But you got to learn where that line is, because as you come out of your little ecosystem or whatever it is, and you start to engage with other people, your approach could flat out offend people, right? And so I think the ego piece, you know, I tell my daughter this all the time, you know, ego is telling everybody how awesome you are, and confidence is knowing how awesome you are. And you know what ego is. Like, you just, ew. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like ego's gross, where confidence is like, damn, and you're attracted to it. And so I think, you know, when I talk about networking and going to talk to people, you have to put yourself out there. You know, I talk about practicing sales everywhere you go. The beauty of sales is it's the only profession out there that you can literally practice everywhere you go. You know, every time I go to a restaurant or to a hotel, I always ask, hey, you know, you got some suites going on upstairs that are going unused. Oh yeah, sure. Hey, could you put me in one of them by any chance? Right? Sure, Mr. Barrows, that'll be an extra $150 a night. But, well, hold still, I didn't want to pay for it. I mean, I'm in town for a night. You know, why don't you put me on? I could go stay over there next time, you know? And half the time I get it, half the time I don't. I don't really give a shit if I get the upgrade, by the way. I'm one dude. I need a bed and a bathroom. That's it, right? But, you know, even suites and stuff like that, they're cool, but I don't need them. But I ask those seemingly awkward questions in harmless situations to kind of gauge people's reaction to them and adjust my approach based on their reaction. So the next time I'm gonna ask it a little differently, see if I can get a better result, right? And so I think that's the key with going up and talking to strangers is, you know, there's some people who are just way over the top, eager, like, hey guy, what's going on? And you can always tell they're selling you on something, you know what I mean? And it's like, ugh. Whereas the people who are genuinely interested and with those conversations lead to relationships that then lead to ultimate sales. So I think that fine line, we all have to figure out, and look, I cross it a lot. You know, ego, confidence. My wife's there to kind of bring me back to reality every once in a while. And but I think it's important to figure out what that is so that you can figure out who you are and how other people are perceiving you. And how to adjust your, I don't want to say adjust your personality, because I think you should be the same type of person no matter what, but adjust your approach so that people can listen, right? Because in Boston, I can stand up on stage when I do a training and go, fuck this and eat shit and you that, right? And everybody's like, yeah, that's awesome, you know what I mean? And they're listening to what I have to say because that's their language, right? Whereas if I go down south and start doing those type of things, no matter how good my message is, as far as the quality of the content, when I drop the F-bomb or use the Lord's name in vain or something like that, they immediately shut down and they're not listening to your message anymore. So I think you need to be, I don't think you need to be a chameleon in sales, because I don't think you should change who you are. But I think you need to change your approach based on your audience, and you can only learn that by pushing the envelope a little bit. And the last thing I'll say on that is, you know, if you're not getting uncomfortable in sales, you're not getting any better. So it's kind of like working out, right? If you go to the gym and you come home from the gym and nothing hurts, that was kind of a wasted gym session to a certain degree, right? Because nothing changed. Whereas if you come home and you can barely walk up the stairs because your legs are fucking jelly, you know what I mean? That type of thing. And you're like, well, something happened there. There's muscle being built there, right? It's the same thing with sales. If you are not constantly putting yourself in a position to be uncomfortable a little bit and stretching who you actually are and trying to connect in different ways, you're not getting any better. So that's why I think you got to push the envelope a little bit, but then ratchet back once you hit that level, right? Once you get enough feedback. I'll give you a good example. My friend Richard Harris over at Harris Consulting Group, you know, me, Jim Keenan, like, we're from Boston. Fuck is part of the vocabulary. So it sounds a little bit more natural coming out of our mouths, right? Just as part of the vocab, right? Whatever. We can use it as a verb, an adverb, you know, name it, right? Whereas like Richard, he's a super nice guy from California. When he drops it, like it kind of feels, that doesn't feel right. And so he was, you know, when he was really starting to go and he was dropping it and it just didn't, and a lot of customers were like, you know, could you do me a favor and not,
And I actually had to reach out to him and say, hey, Richard, I've heard a couple of times at this point. 1 time, no worries, everybody gets one. 2 times, you know, you got to start looking around. 3 times, kind of, I have a 3 strikes and you're out type of thing. Like if you're a vendor of mine. 1 time you screw up, whatever, everybody screws up. 2 times, all right, you're on notice. 3 times you're out. I'm going to go find another vendor. That's the type of thing when I get feedback. 1 time, no matter what, you're never going to be able to make everybody happy. The 2nd time, you got to start paying attention. The 3rd time, now you have to do something, right? And so that's where I think, you know, figuring out that line and getting kind of pushed back a couple of times and then being like, okay, there's the line, is where your personality sits.
Very cool. All right, question number 6. I'm going to get out my computer to show you
all right.
some of these images while you roll here.
Let's do something different.
All right, spinning again on the
I
noodles.
want to try all these things.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, this one here, this one right here, Ghost in the Darkness.
All right.
We have another nug. So for this segment, I'm going to show you some pictures, and you are going to tell us. You're gonna explain what's going on here. All right, give me 3 pictures. Here's number 1.
Vegas. Man, this is a fucking story. So this is a personal side. Every year we have a Halloween party. It's called Spankoween. My wife named it that way. It's not S&M weird shit. It's just we really like Halloween. My wife, every time she meets somebody, she smacks their ass. That's how we met, actually. So she calls it Spankoween.
It's not S&M. I just want to
no. Well, when you hear Spankoween, you hear fucking weird shit, right? So anyways, I paint the basement, floor to ceiling. We get a couple of DJs come in, 50, 60, 70, 80 people show up at the house. And the costumes are bananas, right? So this picture, 10-year anniversary. We went to Vegas. So went to Vegas and we rented out the Real World suite. Remember the Real World? So the Real World suite at the Palms. Right, because it's the only suite that has like multiple bedrooms. Most of the suites in Vegas are huge suites, but they only have like 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms. We had 35 people come with us, so we needed a place for people to sleep. So we rented out the Worldwood suite, and the theme, we have a theme every year, and this year's theme was Elvis. So, and I didn't want to just, because we were hosting it, all you have to do, by the way, is pay to get there, and then we take care of everything else. So, like the room, the nights out, all that stuff, right? So, because we were hosting it, I didn't want to show up with like one of the flimsy, go to, the Halloween store and buy a piece of shit, costumes. So we went online and we found like, I forget what the website is, but they make custom Elvis suits. And it just so happens that suit was my exact dimensions. My wife had to have hers custom made, but there was ones where you could choose and height, weight, and all that other stuff. And it fit like a fucking glove. Like, I mean, a literal glove, right? Yeah. And so, so I put the thing on. I got this ridiculous. So my wife and I, we went to have our vows renewed. So we went to the wedding chapel, the Elvis chapel, and renewed our vows with Elvis as the right. And so I'm walking by. And so if you look at that picture, right, that's like on the way into the chapel. And as I'm walking, my friend was like, hey, you got to take a picture with that car. So I just was like real quick, just did a, hey, and then kept walking. And then she put a filter on it. And it legitimately looks like you look in the background, there's an IHOP, there's an old piece of shit hotel. Like it looks like it's from exactly the 50s. And so I was like, holy shit, this is the best picture I've ever seen. And that, I made it my cover for Facebook and stuff like that. So yeah. Oh, fuck. Where'd you find that one? All right. So I got a bunch of idiot friends. We're all just degenerates. And one of them had his birthday. I think it was his 40th birthday, and he wanted to go kayaking up in Maine. And so, right, we all go, it's just guys, right? And we go get all torn up the night before, and then the morning, we're getting ready to go kayaking. And he hands each one of us a costume, and they were all superheroes, right? So I was Captain America, we had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, we had, like, you name it. It was, Superman, all of them. And we all wore, and by the way, I'm the smallest of all of my friends. I'm 6'1", 2 bills. Most of my friends are like 6'4", 6'5", 250, contractors, stuff like that. So there was 10 of us. And I don't know, have you ever been whitewater rafting?
No.
So you don't, it's not just you. Usually you go with a whole group, like a bunch of other whitewater rafting, right? It's not just one raft. And so there's like 30 or 40 rafts going down the river, right? And you know, kids and families and stuff like that. So we're, first of all, shattered, like waking up in the morning of, like hungover as shit. And we put these fucking idiot outfits on and we're walking down, and picture this, like 10 huge dudes wearing these costumes, walking down to get our boat. And like kids are looking at us like, oh my God, that's this, like they thought we were superheroes, right? And so, and then you have 10 of us like rowing down in like level 4 and 5 rapids, like in these idiot costumes. So it was just complete mayhem.
How are we doing here?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, yeah. I feel
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
All right, question number 7. Give it a spin.
Torch Bearer. Did we already do that one?
The zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, let's try it. Let's try something else.
Okay.
Mad Dog, have we done that one?
We did Mad Dog, yeah.
All right, how about,
Mad Dog has...
how about that one? Have we done that one?
No, it's the worst, actually.
Oh, great.
This is the only one that has capsaicin just added into it, so it's just...
This one?
Yeah, it tastes terrible.
Oh, good, good. So it tastes like shit and it burns.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
How has account-based marketing changed the role of the sales rep?
Holy fuck. Very interesting question. Well, I think if account-based marketing is done right, there's a big question whether it's done right, because I don't think very many people are doing it right. You know, if it really is tailored to a targeted, very targeted audience where they get content from marketing that is directly relevant to their personas or their industries or those type of things. So if done right, what it should lead to is a much more intelligent conversation from the sales rep. You know, sales and marketing is an interesting thing because I got my degree in marketing. This one's burning. Fuck me. Hold on. So, actually, that made it worse. Oh, that made it way worse. How did water make it worse? All right, so account-based market. Where was my head at? So what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing technology and marketing pretend like they're working with sales, but really what they're trying to do is replace sales. Right, so it's like I think there's a big reckoning coming up here because so many. I start almost all my presentations when I do training off with death of the average sales rep, which is if you're an average sales rep, the ones who are just cranking out template emails, making generic cold calls, you know, press and play on demos, those type of things, they're going to get replaced by technology in the not so distant future. No question about it. I'm already seeing artificial intelligence do shit way better than sales reps can at that kind of mundane stuff. So sales reps, what I'm trying to get them to realize is. And I stole this from Gary Vee. You know, he talks about how everybody says content is king, right? Still burning. He says, fine, if content is king, then context is God. And that to me is marketing versus sales. Marketing is content. Sales is context. So if we as sales professionals are not putting any context around our content, we're no different than marketing, and I have no idea why we're getting paid to do what we do. So when it comes to account-based marketing, we need to take this information that is being fed to our target audiences and put some context around it about why it's relevant to them. Because a lot of times if a piece of content comes across your plate where, you know, it's a marketing email about something or whatever it is, you're probably going to disregard it because it looks like a marketing, whatever, who cares, right? I mean, unless it's like, holy shit, like the subject line just is exactly what I'm looking for. So if a sales rep can now take that content that is going to go out to the audience, right, to do the ground, you know, air cover and whatever it is, but then say, hey, you know what, I know you probably got that piece of content that marketing just sent out. I'm not sure if you read it or not, but the reason I think you should be interested in this based on what I know about you is because, and put some context around it, right? That's where a sales rep can start to leverage all of this information, but also put the filter on it. You know, because, you know, I use the analogy, right? I mean, Iron Man's the easiest analogy of what sales reps have to be right now. I used to use Iron Man as the analogy of the suit plus the person, right? So the technology plus the person. But you have artificial intelligence now, right? So, you know, Tony Stark as an individual, there's no way he could go out and fight this fight about all these aliens. He'd get killed, right? So he has to have the suit. But the suit doesn't work without Jarvis. So now account-based marketing, I think, is kind of a part of the suit of a sales rep, is that they have insights from what clients are doing. They have content that's being pushed to those customers because they kind of fit certain personas and those type of things. And now it's a sales rep's job to take those insights and that information that is being sent and put some context around based on what they know about that account. So to say, hey, this is why it is really relevant to you. And that's where I think the sales rep needs to evolve to take all this information and put the filter on and help me understand. So here's from a tactical standpoint as an example, like webinars. I sign up for thousands of webinars. I don't attend any of them. You know why? Because I know right after the webinar I'm gonna get the email, hey John, sorry you missed the webinar, here's a link to it, and it's gonna go in my things to read folder and I'm never gonna look at it. But if a rep would ever say, hey John, I saw you sign up for that webinar, I noticed you missed it. Based on what I know about you, if you start listening to this webinar around minute 15 and go from minute 15 to 25, there's some really cool stuff there from an execution standpoint that I think you might get some value out of. Like if a rep would ever do that, you know, I'd fall out of my chair. I'd be like, holy shit, you know what I mean? So I think that's what's evolving is we have to realize where we don't add value anymore as sales professionals. It's not our job to teach people about features, functions, speeds, and feeds at this point. The internet, you know, pre and post internet. Pre-internet, sure. Nobody else knew. There was no other way to really get that information, so we had it, and I was going to, you know, share that with you. Post-internet, it's a Google search away. My job is to get you to think. Is to get you to realize that if you are okay with where you are right now, I'm worried for you. Because there's going to be an app that comes out tomorrow that's going to disrupt an industry, make a job irrelevant, whatever it is, right? And so if you're not paying attention, then you could wake up and be replaced. So my job is to take all this information and all this, you know, customer insights and all that other stuff and put it into a format that gets you to pause for a second and say, shit, maybe I should have a conversation about this. And so that's where I think the sales rep of the future is going, is they're going to be Iron Man effectively.
Very cool. Question number 8.
All right. What have we not had? The bomb-ass salsa? Yeah, let's see what happens.
There's a couple here.
Reaper, have we had Reaper salsa?
We have not had the Reaper salsa.
Let's do that one.
All right, here we go.
That's this one, right?
Yes, it is.
All right, another.
Grab another chip there.
Off chip.
Yeah, these are chips are a nice little
added kick. Yeah, great, awesome.
Oh, man. What's the most thoughtful gift you've ever received?
Wow, this one's easy actually. I'm gonna give. Well, hold on a second. That was easy. Scott McGregor over at Try Something New. You know him? Okay, so Try Something New. I had no idea. So this goes back to context content. This is like the ultimate level of personalization. So I don't know how I got on Scott's radar. They do recruiting, right? So they do, say, placement, you know, that type of thing, and for executives. And I don't know how I got on his radar, but we connected, I don't know, probably through LinkedIn or something like that. And then all of a sudden, so I'm a Boston Patriots fan, pretty obvious, you know, my LinkedIn profile, my picture, all that stuff. And I tweet and post a lot about my daughter and those type of things. And so I had, you know, my daughter was probably 2 or 3 years old or something like that. And I get this package in the mail, and it's from Scott, who I don't even really remember. Honestly, I was like, who's Scott? Like, how do I know him? But okay, open the package. It was Malcolm Mitchell from the Patriots wrote a children's book. In the package was Malcolm Mitchell's book, Patriots fan. Open the cover, an autograph from Malcolm Mitchell saying, hey John, hope your daughter enjoys this book. And Scott was like, hey John, I know you're a huge Pats fan and your daughter's around the age where stories are probably going to be, you're reading their stories. I thought you really would appreciate this. I don't get gifts like that from my family. You know what I mean? Like from a thoughtfulness standpoint, I called up Scott. I was like, Scott, I don't really remember how I know you. I have zero interest in recruiting as far as like I'm never going to work for somebody else. I don't say never. You know, the likelihood of me ever taking a job now that I run my own company is not high. But who do you focus on? what is your target demographic? What are you trying to get accomplished? Because I'm in. And so now, anytime anybody asks me about anything related to recruiting, I'm like, call Scott. Just call him. He's the most thoughtful person I've ever come across in my life. He's still to this day, like, he was in Maryland about 6 months back, and I get a package with and I went to University of Maryland. I open up this package. It's a Maryland Terrapins hoodie with a Maryland Terrapins hat. I'm like, what the fuck, Scott? Like, you spent hundreds of dollars on me, and I'm not your audience, man. But I mean, like, it blew me away, and so that. I'm not saying you have to go that personalized with your stuff when you're reaching out to your prospects and stuff like that, but a little personalization tends to go a long way. A nice little thank you card every once in a while, you know, really listening to somebody and being unique. You know, I'll give you an example today. Trish Bertuzzi, she's a good friend of mine. Yeah. And she's got a bee farm, so I'm connected with her on Facebook, and she's all into bees, right? And I was in Newport last weekend, and I walked by this art exhibit, and there's these glass sculpted bees. And I immediately thought of Trish, and she got me, we're speaking on a panel. She asked me if we could speak on a panel at Dreamforce. And, you know, so it gets me a free ticket, $1,800, right? So that's $1,800 back in my pocket that I didn't have to spend. So I see this bee, and I'm like, and I immediately thought of Trish, and I'm like, I got to get that for her. And I just gave her at the conference. And she's like, oh my God, thank you so much, you know? But those type of things matter, right? Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I mean, we're big fans of thoughtful gifts, so
right.
glad
of course,
you agree.
right.
Question number 9. Give it a spin.
All right. Yeah, that one stays. I'm sweating inside.
Oh, here we go. This one you haven't had. The Corn Ferno popcorn.
Okay.
You give a few of those there. Oh man. In your belief about what marketing and sales should accomplish, you seem to be focused on one of your posts, AIDA. Attention, interest, desire, action. The 4 mental stages.
Wow.
Do you think most people get this wrong?
In what way? Oh.
Do people leave one of these out? Are people too focused on one and...
This one sucks the most, actually. Because like the kernels get... So AIDA, that's you know, Glengarry Glen Ross, right? So, you know, old school, by the way, Glengarry Glen Ross, great movie, terrible sales movie. Worst sales movie I've ever fucking seen. It's everything that's wrong about selling. By the way, for those of you out there listening, Glengarry Glen Ross, Boiler Room, Wolf of Wall Street, all horrible sales movies. Again, good movies. The best sales movies out there, Pursuit of Happiness, awesome. And my favorite sales movie of all time, Tommy Boy. Hands down the best sales movie you ever come across in your life. Go watch it again. So anyways, but Glengarry, that scene, that 8 minutes of Alec Baldwin, right? ABC always be closing. He also talks about, ooh, it's still burning. He also talks about AIDA, and I thought he made it up, right? So I looked it up. And that is actually the fundamental process of sales. This guy, 1898, a guy by the name of St. Elmo Lewis came up with this. He said, these are the 4 mental stages we all need to go through before we buy something. First, something is to get our attention, then we have to be interested in it, then we have to have a desire for it, and then we have to move to act, right? So we literally have seconds to get someone's attention, and that earns us. That's why subject lines are so important. That's why the first few words that come out of your mouth when you say hello when making a cold call are important. That earns us an extra couple of minutes where we can create interest, right? Maybe ask a question or two, and this one's not quitting, by the way. And then desire, that's our little value proposition to it, and then action, call to action. So where I think, and I use AIDA to align sales and marketing. Fuck me, hold on a second. I use AIDA to align sales and marketing because where I think marketing does a great job, they do a great job on the air cover, okay, to drive awareness, but that's not attention. So they do it, and then they do a pretty good job. Like once you and I are in a conversation, they do a pretty good job with the slide decks and the you know, case studies and those type of things. But where I think marketing tends to fail, and where I think as sales reps we need the most help is the A phase. Like literally, what do I say in the first? What do I say in the first 5 to 15 seconds of a conversation? Like when somebody picks up the phone, literally, what do I say? And the historical elevator pitch is a disaster in that phase because we have 5 to 15 seconds. Most elevator pitches that marketing gives us are 40 seconds, 50 seconds if we took a breath, right? If we didn't take a breath.
So that's why I talk about attention grabbers. Like, what can you say in that first 5 to 15 seconds? And this is where I think marketing can help out sales. Yeah, this is the worst one. I'm not gonna lie, that's the worst fucking one so far. But that's where I think marketing can help us out, is to give us these, what I call attention grabbers. Like, what can you say? And the easiest way, marketing actually already has the content, they just don't cut it up the right way, in my opinion. Sorry, probably. They don't cut it up the right way, in my opinion, because it's a case study, right? Case study is this long thing that, okay, read it. But if you look at the bottom of a case study, the number one competitive differentiator that anybody has, any company has, it has nothing to do with the speeds and feeds and features and functions, what you do, especially at the prospecting stage. It's about the results you drive for your customers, right? So, because your competition can't lie about that. They can lie about how their people are the best, about how we have a better process, better technology, all that stuff, but they have a hard time lying about concrete results that you drive for your customers. So a nice attention grabber, and the easiest way to come up with messaging is look at those case studies and then look at the bottom of it, what was the result? And then say, okay, the reason for my call today is we showed this company in your industry how to drive these type of results. You fit a very similar profile to that. Let's have a conversation. And then that leads to, well, how do you do that, right? That's the attention. And then the interest phase as well. Now here's kind of the elevator pitch part where it fits in. And then desire and action, right? So I think that's where sales reps need the most help and marketing misses. There's a massive difference between, not a massive, there's a difference between sales ready messaging and marketing messaging. Easiest way I can explain this to people is marketing messaging says stuff like, on average, our clients see a 32% increase or up to a 55% whatever, right? Sales language is, no, we showed this company in your industry how to drive these exact type of results and you fit a similar profile. So if we can fix that, and marketing can kind of give us persona-based messaging and trigger-based messaging with results associated, but like one-liners to say, hey, the reason for my call today is, boom, in 10, 15 seconds, that's where I think it comes together.
Here it is, home stretch, question number 10.
What have we not done yet?
We haven't done time's up.
Which one's that one?
Right here.
All right, let's
this one
let's
is,
round it out.
So I believe is my personal opinion that this is both the most delicious and the spiciest.
All right, fuck it.
All right, so we talked a little bit about kind of looking at sales reps not existing in the near future, if they're just using automation to then get automated out.
Average sales rep.
Average sales rep. Where do you foresee sales going in the next 5 years?
So I really, that is tasty. I'm still burning from this fucking piece of popcorn. So I'm going to talk about tech sales and then the rest of the world. Right, because I can't, oh, you're right. Because I constantly have to keep, Bucket keeps grabbing you. Hold on a second, I'm gonna have to, I finally broke and I'm gonna have to blow my nose on this one.
Yeah, a little bit of a delayed.
Yep. So where's, okay. I constantly have to be taking myself out of the tech and San Francisco bubble, right? Because I think it's a bubble, and whatever you're doing in that world, once you come out of that world, it's like it's brand new again. So you could play something out in that world and then go to two industries down, and it's like, holy shit, social selling, what the fuck is this? So I do have to keep that in mind. But where I see in general things going, I think in the next 5 years we're in this weird transition phase, because I don't know how old you are, but I'm 42, all right? When I grew up in sales as a Gen Xer, it was a numbers game. It was reco, phone, numbers, done, right? Now we're the managers, okay? Or we're the leaders in sales. And everybody understands account-based marketing and all this other, everybody understands that quality is the answer. But because managers, keeps coming back. Because managers, sales reps get limited education, right? We're the least educated in our profession. There's very few universities you can actually get your degree in sales. So School of Hard Knocks, whatever. Managers get even less training, right? Usually the best sales rep gets trained to be the manager, or gets to be the manager, which is usually the worst idea, right? Because now it's like, okay, now tell everybody how to do what you do, and they have no idea how to do that. And so they have a really hard time finding time to coach, which is the number one thing a manager should do, is do individual coaching with their reps on stuff like that, right? So they tend to deal chase. And where the fuck was I? So this is where this stuff, because I had a point. I was going somewhere with it. Hold on a second, I'm gonna find it. But that keep, yep. Okay. So that's what it is. So we manage towards numbers, right? That's easy. I can tell you to make 50 dials, and if you don't make 50 dials, I can fire you because I can say that, you didn't track, you didn't make those numbers. So everybody knows quality is the answer. Sidebar, that's why account-based marketing is kind of a joke to me. All account-based marketing is marketing's realization that we gotta stop spamming people. That's really all it is. It's like, oops, we went a little far with we're like, fuck everybody, check it out, look at all our content. Maybe we should stop, right? The problem is that sales reps, and marketing is kind of on this trajectory of getting more quality. Sales reps are on this trajectory. They're using tools like SalesLoft and Outreach and all these sales efficiency tools as as basically sales automation tools, right? And that's why I said earlier that we're teaching the machines who are eventually going to replace us. So, because we're stuck in this quantity game, because managers like me, that's the only thing we know how to manage too. In the next 5 years, as millennials really start to take over the leadership roles in sales, you're going to start to see that numbers start to be less and less important, and quality, because now technology is going to start to get more and more insightful about your business, about the insights, and be able to serve up information that I can use to have better conversations with you, right? In line, during the conversation. I mean, my whole industry, training, I'm preparing for just-in-time learning. Like I know it because I've already seen that there's platforms out there where you're going to be at stage 5 of the sales process in Salesforce, and instead of trying to remember, and you're about to move from stage 5 to stage 6 and call a CFO to talk about pricing, and instead of remembering what I told you 2 months ago during a training, a little video is going to pop up and say, hey, real quick, before you go do that, make sure XYZ, right? So that's happening. So with that, the content that is out there and the machine learning and the artificial intelligence, the people that aren't leveraging that and are doing the mundane task, pressing play on cadences and just asking regular BANT questions or pressing play on a demo and going through everything and not engaging, I'm not saying they're going to get replaced. I just think they're going to shift. So I don't think that everybody's going to die as far as sales reps. There's still going to be a massive value in the sales reps who do it right. But the ones who are going through the motions are going to become salaried and probably roll up under marketing or operations instead of sales. And the SDR role, because what happened unfortunately was when I first started in sales, it was a sink or swim. Like, here's your territory, here's your quota, good luck. You had to prospect, meet, and close. There was no tools, there was a phone book and some, and some emails, right? Now, with predictable revenue and how it's segmented, now you got the inbound and the outbound, and then you close, that type of thing. The segmentation is fantastic for organizations because they can build sales reps, and there's a much longer career, and sales reps tend to stick in for a longer time, because earlier 3 out of 4 people when I was getting into sales got out of sales because they're like, fuck, I can't do all this stuff, right? But you became if you stayed with it, you became a much more well-rounded sales rep much faster. Now, inbound, and I hate to say it, but like when you're responding to an inbound, somebody who's like, hey, I'm interested, that ain't selling. I'm not saying it's order taking, because that's a different story, but ask a few questions, show them a demo, and they like it, like, that ain't sales, right? So I think people are getting in, oh, sales, I like this. All I gotta do is talk to people. And then all of a sudden they go outbound and you see a massive drop off from the reps who take inbound and then go outbound, right? Because now I gotta cold call somebody who's never heard, but still all you're doing is making calls. So it's just kind of this, all right, let me just get through these numbers, trip over some opportunities. And then you go to close and you're like, whoa, how do I, you know what I mean? So I think there's a big drop off at each one of those transitions. I also think that that is not customer centric in any way, shape, or form. The predictable revenue model is just straight up not customer centric. Who wants to have who wants to talk to 4 people before you actually talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about? That's inherently frustrating as a prospect. So some kid calls me, gives me a pitch. I'm like, okay, well, you actually caught me at a good time. This is interesting. Let's talk about this. Well, I actually don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Let me get somebody else on the phone who knows, right? And then you flip that over, and all that conversation that kid had never gets transitioned over to this person. So now this person's asking the same questions as that person did. So now I'm kind of annoyed, right? And then usually that sales rep doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. So they bring in an engineer who knows what they're talking about. And the engineer starts asking from the beginning because none of the conversation has been transitioned there. That's not a good experience. You know what I mean? So I think we're going to move to a pod system where it's going to be account-based marketing, where there's going to be like one SDR with 2 or 3 AEs. And then I think like a low-level marketing person who is responsible for running reports, looking at data, running insights, and then taking that, because sales reps will never do that shit, right? We say, oh, we should split tests and track all this stuff. So they never do. They just push the fucking button. And so having a marketing, somebody who's more operations and focused on the data, taking the insight on that team for that territory or whatever it is, and then feeding that back to the big marketing team and saying, hey, big marketing team, this is what my team needs. Can I have that information? Now that person becomes the conduit between sales and marketing that can actually make these 2 pieces work a lot more effectively together. And now that person's role could go in either direction, right? They could go into sales. Hey, no, I really like the sales part of this, or no, I like the marketing part of this. So I think a large portion of the SDR, BDR community is going to shift over under sales, under marketing and operations, and going to be turned into salaried positions. Because look, you want to get paid 50 grand a year to push a button? Okay, maybe. I ain't gonna pay you commissions on that stuff though. So that's where I think it's going. The question I have, and I haven't been able to figure this out, is where are the fully vetted, the well-rounded sales reps gonna come from now, right? Because if you go through the gauntlet of SDR, BDR, AE, SMB, mid-market, enterprise, you become a very well-rounded sales rep. Because it's like Picasso, my favorite artist. You know, when he went into one medium, like the blue period, he mastered that, right? And then he would go to the next one. So once you master that, now you're well-rounded. Now it takes a lot longer than it did for me, right? But very few people are lasting that entire track. And enterprise sales is becoming a dying breed. You know, people are spending more and more money online and are going further and further down the sales process without having to engage in a sales or wanting to engage with a sales rep. Eventually, you're going to have to, but that's why I actually think the SDR, the inbound, is going to rise up to be a lot more a senior position than the entree level position. Because if you follow a challenger sale, right, CEB, about how it's, you know, by the time somebody comes to us, they're already 60 to 70% of the way through the sales process. If you're already 60, and do you want to talk to some 22-year-old kid who's going to ask you BANT questions? No. You want to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about. So I think that a lot of the senior reps who have been out in the field forever are going to come back and say, you know what? Why don't I just sit behind 9 to 5 and answer questions at a high quality and help people make decisions and do all this account-based marketing to drive people towards a much higher quality. So customer success, sales, we'll start to do this. So I think there's a lot of different pieces moving here. I don't know exactly when or how, but I think that's the macro stuff that's going to happen because it's just inevitable. It has to. Technology is moving way too fast. And you know, personalization with technology and automation in sales. You don't have to be Nostradamus to figure out where that goes.
John Barrows, thank you very much for your time. You've completed it.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I didn't die, and I didn't embarrass myself, hopefully.
All right. All right. Well, I don't know about that, but you did get it all the way through, and your wife Kim.
Yep.
So she's got we've got a couple of different options here, 3 different options. So she shares on Facebook that she's a major Pats fan. Has even met multiple Patriots players, including Brady, Edelman, and Amendola.
Yep.
So one option here is a design of Gillette Stadium printed on this awesome kind of cotton fine art paper. Looks like.
Ooh, cool.
Looks like this here. Very
That's
cool.
pretty badass.
Another one is that Kim loves dressing up in costumes, as she shares on Facebook, as we also talked about. So she can enjoy a trip to Spirit Halloween pop-up stores that come around Halloween time. There's a gift card to that store. And then she also shares on Facebook that she is a Bruins fan.
Yes.
And so she can enjoy some Bruins swag here from the official fanchest.com store.
Yeah. I think the The Halloween thing, just because it's timely and we're having our new one. This year's theme is cartoon characters, and we're trying to figure it out, so I think we'll go with that.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Kim's going to be delighted, and I'm sure everybody was very much delighted to watch you sweat a little bit. Great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.